Welcome to More Precious Than Rubies, where we explore and celebrate the stories of women in our modern world. I'm Ariana, and in today's episode, we're talking with Emmy McDowell, a wife, seminary student, ministry worker, and advocate for sustainable and ethical fashion. Emmy is passionate about making space for women in the church and using her platform, Good for Thought, to educate others on mindful consumption. We'll discuss her journey in ministry, her heart for women in faith spaces, and why ethical fashion is more than just a trend. It's a movement. Emmy, welcome to the show. It's such a joy to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm just thrilled to be here. Thank you so much.
It's such a joy that we've had so many years of friendship and our families have intersected paths at church. And Emmy was always like in a friendship group kind of a little bit aged above me.
Just 1 year, yeah.
I felt really cool being friends with Emmy because she was in like the cool older kids group.
Okay. Whatever. That's funny.
It has been a joy to get to know you over the years, Emmy. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. And before we get started in kind of some of the more specific questions, if you could share just a little piece of your testimony, introducing yourselves to the listeners. What are you passionate about? Tell us a little bit about your testimony and your passions.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Oh man, there's so many things here. I think it's really funny. Someone asked me this the other day, like, what are your hobbies? What are you passionate about? And I'd say, I love people, I love Jesus, and I love animals and the planet. I'm broad, right? I just love all of these things. But my testimony starts at Emmanuel Faith, how I remember it and how I was told the story. I was 4. And so there was like the 4-year-old Wednesday night
caterpillars.
Group.
I think
really?
It was.
Or the pollywogs or the frogs,
something
or
like
all
that.
These little,
Yeah.
These cute little kid names. And I was in the class on a Wednesday night, and how my dad tells me the story is that, and I remember the room and I remember being emotional, but I don't remember exactly what happened to me. But I went home, and I guess my sweet dad, he was like, you said to me, along the lines of, I met Jesus, and Mr. AJ, my Sunday school teacher, said that I need to ask you to help me walk in how to invite Jesus into my heart, and if you won't, he will. And my dad, he says that in that moment, even if he wanted to convince me otherwise, he wouldn't be able to.
Wow.
Because I had met Jesus, and I wasn't going back before. And for me, like, I think a lot of people in their testimonies of growing up in church, that is like, oh, it's so basic or sad. I am amazed of the way that God has been in my life ever since then. I don't remember a whole bunch before that, but to have Jesus in my life has been a joy. And I think the thing about a testimony is it's ongoing. The testimony of my life last year and this year, and I think what will be to come, is all going to just say, well, look what Jesus did. Look what Jesus did in my life. And so from 4 to now almost 30, Jesus has done so much. So my testimony is so much of what Jesus has done in being close to me, in the highs and the lows, in some depression, in some really tough situations, and even a lot of church hurt. Jesus, his story and him coming into my life have been the most beautiful thing ever. So Jesus grabbed me, just absolutely grabbed me, and has not let go.
Wow.
So praise be to God.
Yeah, praise God.
Yeah.
I think that's so fun because Mr. AJ also brought me to Christ when I was 4.
Yes.
And I remind him every time I see him of how much he has meant to me in my life and my walk of faith.
That's
because
so beautiful.
When you think about the people that start the domino effect in kids' lives of having Jesus hold on to them, and that's childlike faith, right?
Yes.
Like your dad's saying he could have never convinced you otherwise, and that's like the definition of childlike faith.
Right. Like, I know something, and I'm gonna hold on to that because that is all I know now.
Yes.
And my whole life has been changed suddenly. Yeah. Even if I didn't know what it was before that.
Right. And now you've since worked with youth ministry at times in your life. Yeah. And I just think that it's incredible to see how someone changed your life when you were a kid, and that has now influenced you to change other kids' lives. And even when I attend like memorial services or funerals, and people talk about the domino effect that older generations had on kids. So if Mr. AJ ever hears this, like,
Mr.
bless
AJ.
you. Like,
Mr. AJ.
seriously, you've saved kids' lives, I think. And
absolutely.
that is so fun to hear that we have that connection.
It is cool. And I think also, like, being in youth ministry, there's so many statistics that come from being in youth group. And then people after that youth group or that kids era, they go on to college, they start deconstructing, they kind of walk away from the faith. But then once they have kids, people are like, oh, I want what I had when I was a kid. I want my kids to have what I had. And then they bring their kids back to church. The family comes back to faith, because there is a depth and a beauty when it comes to, like, children and showing them what it means to live in life. And life with Jesus, man, it is good amongst the heart. So I think kids ministry, children's ministry, youth ministry is so important, even when we see people walk away from the faith. Because Jesus has them, and Jesus isn't going to let them go. No matter what.
Yeah, I love that. And our world has changed since we were kids, right? Like, I can't even imagine the dire need that kids need Jesus now more than ever. So I'm just like, so fun that we have that connection together in Mr. AJ, and I'm glad that there's people like you out there who are continuing that journey for kids. So that is such a fun part of your testimony. Thank you for sharing that.
Thanks for asking.
Now let's get it a little bit more into your life so our listeners can get to know you a little better. So you are a part of Seminary. So you've been taking seminary courses. So what inspired you to pursue seminary studies, and how has this journey shaped your faith?
I did my undergraduate at Vanguard University in theological studies. And as someone who is a woman who wants to do ministry, and at the time was like, I don't know what to do, got my bachelor's, and I was like, I want to get my feet wet, got into ministry, and then like a bachelor's is great, a master's is better. And I also really was like, I want to learn more. I'm so eager to learn more. And so I was actually having a conversation with a woman who had been in ministry for a long time. And this is what she said. Again, this is a generalization, but she had told me, she goes, a woman in ministry with a master's is somewhat equivalent to a man in ministry with a bachelor's.
Interesting.
You just need more education. In a way, you just need more to make up for what feels like we're not there yet.
Got it.
When it comes to even playing fields.
And
I was like, okay, interesting. Better get started. I was looking at different programs and different seminaries, and what do I want in seminary? What is it going to do for me? I didn't want just a program that was just going to be education for the sake of education on a resume. I wanted it to form me. I wanted it to be in a place that I could grow in and learn in. And so I'm getting a master's in spiritual formation. There's a couple reasons for that. And there's a couple different, people would have different definitions, or even I would. There's like 5 different things you could say about what spiritual formation is. And at different seminaries that I was looking at. And so for like a broad idea from what I saw, there's like a route of like global missions, like partnerships. And I was like, oh, that sounds like fun. Then there's like leadership and culture. I'm like, that sounds great. That's like the business side of ministry church, like how to lead. I was like, okay, interesting. Then there's like this very theological, scholastic view, or like route that is more like for teaching and preaching and all that really good stuff there, or pastoral care and counseling. And I love all those things. And so when spiritual formation really became something that I was on my radar, was like, you can do spiritual formation in all of these things. Because spiritual formation is in all the things. Spiritual formation's in our preaching, in our worship, in our day-to-day ordinary things, in fasting, Sabbath, community. Spiritual formation is setting up our lives in a way to make room for Jesus, or putting our attention towards Jesus and the things that we do. So spiritual formation is in all of the things.
When you get into a major where it's like, you could really do anything, like, that's great. As an adult, I think we're thankful for that, because we see how tough it is to get into the job market now. So it's hard to be in a niche, right? It's hard sometimes to be stuck in a niche. So even though it's stressful and like, oh my gosh, I could do anything with this, I see that as like an advantage, because that you have a lot of options, but it can be really scary. I get that.
So scary, but also so exciting, because there are so many possibilities. So for example, I could go into spiritual direction. I have a spiritual director, and I know different kinds of people who do different kinds of spiritual directing. There's people who lead retreat centers, different things that you could typically do with a spiritual formation degree.
Sure.
But I also would love to be a type of pastor of a community that's looking at the community life, the spiritual life, the discipleship life. Let's get in the nitty gritty. How are we being formed in the likeness of Jesus, or setting up our life so Spirit can come in and just transform us?
Yeah.
I love that kind of stuff. I love to teach. I love care and counseling. I love all the things, but I really love that really just deep discipleship.
Yeah.
And how do you set that up? So I think I have a lot of dreams. I think a dream would be to be able to look at a community and start forming that.
Okay.
Forming what could it look like to be on a journey with a community and do that together, like a discipleship pathway or whatnot, and stuff that we've tried in youth ministry. That's super awesome.
Sure.
Another reason why I chose spiritual formation as a pathway is I do believe that we're in a special time of movement in the Western church, or the global church too.
Sure.
Working in youth ministry in the age of, like, we were in the digital age, but also like the information age. We're in the age of AI. Noticing a lot of teenagers and Gen Z have so much information.
Okay.
We all have access to information. We can all go to school anywhere. There's so much content out there.
For free sometimes.
For free,
too.
yes. Yeah. We have access to so much information.
Yeah.
And I think how awesome that was in my teen years to just learn, where I think right now people are moving into, I want to experience this.
Interesting.
I don't want just information. I don't want to just know it here. I want to know this.
Yeah.
So it's not just something, a prayer that you say. It's not just one thing. It's not just one little piece here and there. It's like, how do we move from knowing everything in here to actually letting Jesus speak to all the parts of us?
Yeah.
So I think that's another reason I've seen what this kind of trajectory has been. I think where we're going as a society and a movement of, it's more than just information we need.
Yeah.
And I want to be a part of what's setting us up well for Jesus to come speak and be in our lives in really radical ways.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. Well, can you share a little bit about a moment in your life when you felt that you got called to work in ministry? Okay. Because, I mean, you've done different forms of ministry over the years, but do you remember a time when you were like, this is something that I want to do?
So when I first went to Vanguard University, I went there as a theology major, but my theology was based around, I'm a female, so I'm going to do roles of like women's directing, probably high school girls directing, maybe kids directing, and administrative assistant. Great, wonderful roles. And that was my intention going into school to learn about Jesus. And then as I got to school, my professors were like, actually, it seems like you've been gifted in other ways. I fought them. I was that girl. I'm that 20-year-old girl who's sitting with my professors who've been in church ministry and teaching biblical studies for decades. And I'm like, actually, you're wrong. Actually, women don't do that. Actually, this is what it says. And they were like, hey, I don't know. So they would use their office hours to sit with me and show me, hey, actually, no, that's not necessarily what we see here. And I was just not convinced. I was not convinced. And then I had one professor, his name is Dr. Bill Doctrum, and he has like actually changed my life in so many ways. And he walked with me so much in how I was feeling like Jesus was revealing like ministry. There might be more than just what I thought it was for me. And I was like, no, there's no way. So as I was processing that, and then I joined his preaching and teaching class. And I was like, okay, cool, I got to get this one done. I was super nervous, not to speak in public, because I'm pretty like, I got that. Like I actually really enjoy speaking in public, but I thought I was going to get something very wrong about the Bible. I was so terrified because I'm like, I'm a woman, like I'm just not smart enough, all these different like doubts. And he was like, you're going to be fine. So it's my turn to do like my message for our class. It's a small class. And I do my message and I'm like, okay, it's done. I'm still standing there. And how it works is that the entire class, and there's like 12 of us, they all give you positive feedback. Right there is you're still standing there. They're all saying like really nice things. I was like, oh, that's wild. Okay, thanks. And then when they're finished, the professor who is standing at the opposite side of the classroom, he's just gives you the critiques. And he looks at me, and it was such a powerful moment for me that I'll never forget. And he looks at me and he goes, Emmy, you need to stop ignoring the fact that you've been called to do this in front of everybody. And I was like, it was like this powerful moment. Like whatever is telling you that you don't have what it takes, we're going to peel that off in front of everybody. And I just was like, all right. That was like, it felt like a moment where Jesus showed up and was like, I know you've been fighting me. Guess what? I'm sick of you trying to fight me on this. I want you to do this. And I think like ministry terrifies me. And as it should. Anybody who goes into ministry should be a little terrified. It's dangerous. Like it is.
Yeah.
And so I resisted for so long. But that moment, finally, I just stopped pushing back at that day. It was like, okay, Jesus, whatever you want to do, I trust you. And you've spoken so clearly, and I trust you in that. So that was a moment that changed everything.
Wow. That's incredible. I think that's something I've experienced working in ministry is how ministry, like you said, is dangerous and is most vulnerable to the devil. I think I've never experienced as much spiritual warfare as I have working for a ministry, even though I think a lot of times we tend to like brush it off and be like, oh, that was a fluke. It's like, was it though? Like there have been so many times where our podcast recordings have gone down. Something that has never happened before has happened to our producer. And it's like, you tend to think like, oh, well, it's just technology. But he was like, no, it's literally never happened. And I can't explain it. Pastors and deacons and being in those higher roles tend to be attacked the most because those are shepherds to God's people. And that's so interesting to see how that kind of has played out in your journey. That's so interesting. Seeing your passion for it is just inspiring to me. And it's like helpful to see that side of it. And so it's just really encouraging to hear you talk about it. Thanks. And such a crazy experience. Like that would be also wild for me too. Like as obviously, like I don't mind talking in front of people, but that is just like, even in front of 12 people, that doing that is crazy to me. So good for you. Like thank you. And just think about like someday perhaps that 12 people turning into like 50 or 100.
Right,
or like,
right. And then it did, right? Because then I had many opportunities to preach to all my students and different things, and Jesus will continue to use me for hopefully His glory. Like
incredible.
That's what we want. Perhaps maybe through preaching and teaching. We'll see.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Emmy. That's awesome. Well, speaking of that, actually, what barriers do you see for women in the church today, and how can we work towards inclusivity? Maybe just like you can speak to it in multiple facets, like how can women work towards inclusivity? How do you think the church should work towards inclusivity? What do you think about that?
Besides the fact that a lot of churches and denominations are in different places when it comes to women, and everyone comes to their own conclusions in different ways. I think for me, a barrier, these are all very personal. I'm not sure if another woman would agree, but these are my personal experiences. One of the first ones is I don't really have any good role models.
Okay. Female role models?
Yes, sorry.
Got it.
I don't have female role models who are like killing it.
Okay.
Because I know a lot of lead pastors who are men. I know a lot of people in ministry who are men and leading and doing a great job. I don't know a lot of women who are doing it.
Okay.
And that is a barrier.
Okay.
Because how am I supposed to know that that's even a thing if I don't see it? I think I know I have really, really great mentors. I have a lot of like pastors' wives that are incredible, people who've walked in ministry in different facets who have poured into me, but I don't currently have a vision of a woman doing anything that I want to do.
Okay.
I don't see it. So we don't see it. That's a barrier.
Yeah.
Because I don't know where are the limits, where are not the limits. Even when you put theology out of it, I just don't know what it looks like. And so for me, that's a barrier. But I imagine for a lot of other women, that could also be a barrier.
Sure.
Where we don't see somebody doing it, how do we know that that's for us?
Yeah.
I think another barrier is how women and men are different and how we work together differently. I mean, you're married, I'm married. We know
how we're wired.
We're wired.
Our physical chemistry. Yeah. How we're made.
Different.
Yep.
It's so different and different in different seasons. It's hard. So I was on a team of me and 3 men, and wonderful. I love them. We're all really close buddies. But at some moments in time, it was really challenging to be like the one female because in some senses, I didn't know where I fit. And there wasn't any weird like power plays between women and men in that, but I was outnumbered.
Yeah.
And I think I oftentimes saw the way that they communicated to each other was in sort of a who has the authority, who has the most to say, who's smart, who's logic, who's witty. And I just don't work that way. I'm less about logic and more about what is my body telling me, what's Jesus saying, and then I kind of process.
Okay.
And I think along those same lines, another barrier I would say that I have been impacted by women in ministry is this idea that because women have not had like the ability to be in ministry the way men have been in, have had the authority or the ways to speak on things, that when women were kind of allowed that door, from what I've seen in some older women that I know, is kind of this, how do I prove myself? We need women to show up in the way that they feel like they've been led by Jesus, and we need both.
Yeah.
But it's hard to get there. So I think giving women grace.
I think that we see that in the secular world too, right? We see like boss babes or like, women fighting to kill the inequality that we see even in the secular world. And that oftentimes gets us burnt out way faster than if we were to just sit back and see if where God has us is where he wants us to be.
Right.
Think of the example that we're setting for other young women who may have that same dream, but are like, well, I don't have that assertive personality. So what am I supposed to do then?
Then I don't know, where does my role work?
Yeah.
Right. Where I don't know any women who are a head pastor, but I know women in other roles.
Yeah.
But I'm still kind of sorting it out. Right. When Jesus wants us to be part of his church, he wants us in the church, but there's so many places that are, hidden that we get to be a part of as well.
Totally. So, Emmy, we're going to change gears. We went really deep, which I love. I'm so excited for that. But we're going to talk about your passion for sustainability next.
Yeah.
So your Instagram page, @GoodForThought, is dedicated to sustainable and ethical fashion. So what led you to start this platform?
When I first moved to Costa Mesa, I heard of a couple different brands and companies that were in the area. It was like millennial prime for like small businesses, right? It was beautiful. It was a great time. And these companies were like, our purchases like give back. And they're like, your purchase has power and it empowers people. I was like, wait, that's so cool. I've never heard of that before. I was so into my wardrobe. I still am. But when I started feeling like, oh, my purchases can give back, that's so cool. But then I started diving deeper into that conversation of not only can your purchase give back, but there's actually this big hole and mystery that nobody knows. This thing called fast fashion and like stuff deteriorating our planet and modern day slavery. And I was like, no way. And having those conversations and getting involved with the Fair Trade Club on campus or sitting down with people from those companies, I was so like convicted.
Okay.
In a way that felt personal.
Okay.
And I started watching documentaries and reading more about modern day slavery and how my consumption habits actually contribute to this horrific thing.
Yeah.
And to me, it's very spiritual and it's very personal. And so it was like, okay, I'm going to start putting this on Instagram, but also there is a life change happening inside of me. And I remember a specific moment. I was sitting with Jesus and I was so frustrated because I was like, I don't want to change my life. I do not want to change my habits, my shopping habits. And I remember just feeling so convicted. And I remember Jesus kind of asking me, like, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Now that you know that this is the reality, what are you going to do? I was so frustrated when he said that. And so my question back was, what are we going to do about it? Because this isn't just me. Jesus, this world is in your hands.
Yeah.
So how do we partner? What is Jesus inviting me into? And that's not for everybody, but that is something where Jesus just said, your life is changing now. And it did. And so that was a platform where it was like, let's do what everybody else is doing. Let's share about this. I'm in this journey and I want this to be my own thing, right? I can make it as big and small as I want. I can do whatever I want with it. It's fun, but also compelling.
Yeah, for sure. What's something that you learned, like when you were sitting down with these companies or watching the documentaries? I think that luckily now fast fashion has become a more known fact to people because of the uncovering of things like Shein or Fashion Nova or whatever. Yeah. So what's something that you learned that maybe other people wouldn't know? If they're like first stepping into like their knowledge of, oh, I'm buying things that are considered fast fashion. Like what's something that you learned?
Something that I learned Let's see. Well, it all kind of comes down to the fashion revolution. It was like a wake up call. And so that was kind of like, oh, that could happen. That it wasn't a one-time thing.
Sure.
This is an ongoing thing. Again. Right. Yeah. And what are the countries that are most impacted by this? What are the systems in place? How are people being lured to this? Or the conversation, people are like, oh, well, at least they have jobs. No, not necessarily. There are so many people who are actually enslaved into this or paid so little or harassed in their environments.
Yeah.
We think it's bad. We have so many rights here. It's so great. We live in a country with so many personal rights, but even in different parts of like LA or things where things slide, people are exploited. And I think just the reality of it, once I started digging, it was like, I can't turn away. There's harm happening because of my habits and what I want.
I guess this is kind of a question that has to do with that. Many people believe that ethical fashion is inaccessible or expensive. So how do you respond to those concerns of people who are like, oh, well, I can't afford it. Fast fashion is fast fashion because it's affordable. Like, what would you say to people who think that?
Well, I would say a couple things. I think, for one, I love the thrifting becoming trendy.
Yes.
Right? Because it wasn't always trendy.
True.
I grew up thrifting. I love digging. And it's not everyone's thing, and that's okay.
Sure. It used to be like weird. Like if you got like a used shirt, it was like, oh. It was like, yeah.
Oh no, I love that it's fun. I love that we've decided that it's better than anything else.
Totally.
I love that. But then when it comes to the expensive part of, let's say, like ethical or sustainable fashion, I think that we have created so many opportunities to just purchase and have so many things that we don't need, that if we just didn't have all that stuff, we could afford the one or two things. And so I think it's the priorities there. There's also this like dupe culture.
Yeah.
Right? That's confusing to me, where it's like, do you like my Dior shoes? They're not real. And I'm like, what are we doing? Like, wait, what? I don't understand.
Right. Like, why would you buy 10 of a dupe when you could just like really save up and like
buy the real
one that'll last way longer, probably.
Or even luxury brands. That's a whole other conversation of like, people will spend the money on a luxury brand, but they won't spend a little bit on an ethically made dress.
Totally.
Whoa, wild. And that maybe is a different conversation, but that's something I've been thinking through a bit more these days.
Sure.
I think the conversation is, what are we consuming? How much are we consuming? Is that even good for us?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think there's some spiritual stuff there as well.
Sure.
I think of how much are we consuming? How much is that good for us?
Sure.
Are we idolizing that? And I'm speaking to myself here, but I think if we put our value systems in something else, we'd make room for it.
Yeah.
And that's where my life changed too, right? Again, personal, where Jesus said, you're giving this up. So when I go to the mall with my friends and I find something I really like, guess what? That's not for me. I don't get to have that because Jesus convicted my heart. Instead, I will do something else with that money, or I will support something else in a different way, or buy something from a different company. It became something that this is for me.
Yeah.
And so when that value system changes and shifts, that's where like that joy kind of comes in of having less, but knowing, hey, this is really good quality, good product. And I like my purchase has purpose.
Yeah.
This helped women in Nepal out of trafficking. This was made in a fair trade factory. This meant that people didn't breathe in pesticides in the cotton field. Like it matters.
Yeah. And something that I've loved that you've introduced me to is like, and this is just another simple step, is like clothes swaps.
Yes.
Literally, clothing swaps are my favorite thing that Emmy has introduced me to. And now I go to like so many. I'm like, any that I can go to, I'm like, oh, I'm there.
Yes.
Like, yes. And even better, it's free.
It's free. It's free.
It's a great way for me to like tickle the sense of like, ooh, like a sweater or a dress that I've like
something new,
and like something that I would have never thought that I would have. Like, who cares? It's free. Like I just get it, you know, and if I hate it, I'll give it away at the next one.
Right.
And I'll also link your Instagram too, because it's just been helpful for me as like an education sense for sure of like, what things are available to be bought as sustainable? Like, what can I invest in as someone who like doesn't shop for clothes that much anymore, but if I wanted to get a piece or like a jewelry piece, like where can I go for sustainable fashion? I'll link Emmy's Instagram in the description if anybody's interested. This question's based off of a study. So this is a study by McKinsey and Company. They found that 67% of consumers consider sustainability when making fashion choices, yet only 37% follow through with that purchase. So why do you think there's a gap between intent and action in that decision?
Just my thoughts here. When we were talking about that like really fun millennial era of like small businesses and everyone cheering each other on, I do think that era has come and gone, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
It's really sad. And I was actually looking at even a reel. Her name's Katie, and she founded a brand called Elegantes, which is a beautiful, wonderful brand. But even that, the marketing for like saying, oh, we do ethical clothing is not pulling in consumers like it used to. I'm curious, and I have been asking, I even brought this question up to my husband, like, I wonder why. What is it with, is it that everything's expensive and we just have to compromise? Is it that we just don't care anymore? Is it that it's old news? Is it that where there's so much content? I don't know exactly what it is. I think there's probably a lot of reasons for that.
And I wonder too if like when I was thinking about this question, I came back to like the world of influencers.
Yeah.
And how often I see influencers pushing fast fashion items or like cheap stuff off TikTok Shop that will get them money in the end. At the end of the day, it's always about like, where do I get my product and my dollar?
Yeah.
And we're not thinking about the people who are making it for us. And I think that when you start to change your mind of like, when you're able to recognize that and be like, oh, you're not in it for the brand. You're not in it for the people that are creating that thing. You're in it for yourself.
Yeah.
And there are so many secular influencers now that are really just like their own marketing team, right? And like brands are paying them so much money to make sure that they convince the average person to buy from this brand.
They need it.
They need it. And they can say anything, right? Like they can lie.
Yes.
And that's the unfortunate part of it is like there are probably influencers out there like you who aren't given the time of day because the algorithm squashes that down because the brand's making more money because you're not looking to make money.
No, yeah.
So that it just gets smushed by the influencers.
It is the paid stuff where typically the smaller, more ethical brands can't always afford that. It's hard enough to get certifications, right? That are great, but it's expensive. And so they're not given that chance. So how do you elevate their voices? The people who are doing the hard stuff in the hard places. Where do they get to come up to the top and be seen? It's tough. And I don't know what that is going to look like. I think there is just some conviction that's not there.
I think that owning a small business and like knowing other people who own small businesses, I wonder if it's the same where it's like there are certain things that we can do for free to support smaller brands or smaller influencers like you, where it's like a share is free, a like is free, a comment is free, because then that helps to boost those brands and people in the algorithm. And the more people see and are made aware and educated on this stuff, the more chance that we have to make a difference in the world. So go follow Emmy's Instagram.
You don't have to. It's just a fun project, but it's pretty fun.
I think that's just like at the end of the day, that's how brands are going to win. Small brands are going to win for sustainability is like taking small steps. And if it's too much right now, that's okay. Yeah. Like do the things that you can for free. Share the thing to your story or like tell a friend about what you learned about Emmy's post or something like that. I think that's what's going to allow the disconnect to be smaller. Well, how do you see ethical fashion connecting with faith and responsible stewardship? We kind of talked about like how God has told us where he wants to put our money, but how do you kind of see that connection in more than just that way?
Oh, I think it is so connected. And again, it's a personal conviction. Yeah. So I try not to be too loud. Even on my Instagram of like, I like to promote like good things. We can do good things. But there is so much like darkness in this that I don't like to peek into, but sometimes it's necessary. Yeah. I was on Pinterest and I was so appalled. I was so mad. I was scrolling and I saw an advertisement and I don't even know what the brand was because I saw it and I was like, it was like a workout company, and it was like leggings, and they had like a cross on it, and it was like, this is your sign to buy clothes that glorify God. And I was like, what the heck? This is bizarre to me. I think it's spiritual, and it depends. Our faith matters, because I think that brand was just fast fashion, some plastic made clothes with a cross on it. And we said, this is going to glorify God. I'm not saying it doesn't, but I think that there is something so much deeper about stewarding, not just our clothes, but how we use our money, and I am preaching to myself here, because I am learning a lot about stewardship, especially in the time of life that I'm in right now of, stewardship of not just my time, not just my money, but my time.
Yes.
Stewardship of any resource that I have, my energy, like this. Some of this is not renewable. What does God want me to do with it? What's actually going to glorify him with it? So when I looked at that ad, I was so furious, because I was like, what if this was made by the hand of somebody who was enslaved? What if this was contributing to severe climate change in our world? What if this is actually against so many things that Jesus is saying, like, hey, care about those people, care about them, and we don't.
Yeah.
But instead, glorify me at the gym. It doesn't matter what you say, if you're nice or if you are belligerent. Like, it doesn't matter if you do all kinds of things. But if you wear this cross on your leggings, you're glorifying God, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a disconnect in that, where I want to get into the deep spiritual stuff. What is God inviting us to do? What are our idols? What do we think is a good image of God? What is a good image of ourselves?
Yeah.
So all of this stuff that we have is getting in the way.
Yeah.
We don't need all this clutter, all this baggage. We don't need it. And I don't need it.
We're not carrying it with us to heaven.
No.
Shocker.
We're not going to take it with us. We're not going to take it with us.
I can't wait to see, like, what we're probably going to have the same outfit every day, but it's going to look fire.
So good. Oh my gosh.
Can you imagine, like,
Jesus dressed me in this thing that I sewed myself? I don't know, but
I guarantee you it won't be what we think it is. Like,
you might be right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, probably. You're probably right.
Yeah.
Actually, that's going to be beautiful.
I know it will be. And I think I think that could help some people, right? Of being like, yeah, there are certain, at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, you could have a wardrobe full of clothes, but if you're a believer, like, we know the verse that says that the earthly treasures aren't going to follow us into heaven. And that, again, it could mean different things. Like, right, if your idol is clothes, but it's not trinkets, right? It was like, well, I don't have a bunch of trinkets. Like, okay, but open your closet and see how many pairs of jeans you have or whatever. And it's like, there needs to be an eye-opening for some people. And I think that that's helpful for other people maybe who have that same idol of like, sometimes we do need conviction. Like your professor told you in front of a whole class, like sometimes you just need someone to tell you like, you don't need that stuff.
Right.
You don't.
This isn't for you.
No.
And you're not going to take it with you. And Jesus wants more for you to not have it. I think that when we look at the fact that there is a hurting world and we're contributing to it, not just ignoring it, but actually contributing to it, that should mean something. Yeah. So I do think it's a spiritual thing. I think it's a faith thing. I think that so many of us want to be able to just clothe ourselves in something like and it's maybe a little bit different, but I'm just going to put that verse in my bio, my Instagram bio, and then people will know that I'm a Christian. I'm just going to get these leggings and people will know. And then I'm going to get this cross necklace. But who made your cross necklace? Yeah. Do we know? Are they okay? Right. Were they abused in the process? And again, I get a little bit passionate. I'm not trying to be dark, but it matters. Yeah. It really does. And there are people out there who are creating products in really beautiful, safe environments and are giving hope and give back in places that there was so much darkness and abuse, and they're being made new creations. Yeah. And so why would we not do that instead? Yeah. And it's a lot of work, and it's hard to find them, and it's hard to support because it's expensive. And then you end up with a lot of clothes again, and you're like, oh no. But I think it matters. I think Jesus doesn't just care about the people who are hurting. I think he cares about our souls. Sure. And how we are consuming at the same time. Yeah. And how cool that Jesus wants to do all of it.
Yeah. So he values them, but he also values you. Yeah. And the way that you can make a small impact for the people that he values is, I think that should give us hope and a little bit of like, I have a chance to change the world. Right. And like, that's cool. Yeah. I think that's awesome. And it's changing me. Yeah.
And it's changing them. Praise Jesus.
Praise Jesus.
So good.
Well, Emmy, I think this is the last question here.
Okay.
So what advice would you give to young women who feel called to ministry but don't see a clear path forward?
I mean, keep your eyes on Jesus. He is not going to just abandon you in that. And you're going to experience pain because it's what it is. Find someone who is a mentor.
Okay.
Find someone in it. Find an advocate. Start asking questions. What are the possibilities? What are the places that will accept me or not accept me? Or even, do I want to be a part of a church that has women pastors, or am I not into that? Right? Because you can be a woman in ministry not at a church that has women pastors. You can be a woman in ministry in a church with women pastors. So it kind of depends on what are you interested in? What are your barriers? So for me, my personal barrier was I want to be at a church that values a woman's opinion in the eldership, but also on pastoral teams and preaching teams where that's my thing. That's not everyone's thing, and that's okay. But I think kind of navigating, I had to get there. And Jesus and I had to wrestle with that. I said, okay, that's what it is. So I think, what is it that Jesus is calling me into? And that can change and shift. Getting those mentors and sitting with Jesus in that. And knowing that you're not alone. Not alone. And Jesus is doing something.
I think, like Emmy said, it's hard to find people who we can look up to in that generalization of a world of women in ministry.
Yeah.
But if you are one, like, start to speak into the lives of women that you see that are that have this yearning for that call. Reach out to Emmy if you need encouragement, because I've seen her growth personally, and I've been really encouraged by it, and it's helped me to form my own opinion as well. And it's just been really encouraging as someone who has worked in ministry and like just tried to find my calling in what I was working at. I've just been encouraged by that. So I hope that Emmy's words have been inspiring and encouraging as well. And as we wrap up, Emmy, your passion for making space for women in the church, dedication to ministry has just been so meaningful to me. And I'm sure it has been for everyone. And even your advocacy for sustainable fashion. I've learned so much. It's been so fun to like see how I can make a difference and how you're making a difference. I can truly see that you're living a life full of intentionality and faith. So thank you so much for being on the show with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. Truly, I'm so grateful to be here. So grateful to be here, that all of the things in our lives, like, may they all point back to Jesus, right?
Yes.
Whether in ministry or fashion or whatever it is, may Jesus be in it. And that's my hope and prayer, that it is intentional. And so thank you so much for letting me share, because it is important to me. And so thank you. Thank you. I
can
really
feel that.
appreciate it.
And I love seeing people get excited for what they believe in and what they're passionate about.
Yeah.
So it's been such a joy. And your journey actually reminds us that faith is not just about our belief, right? It's about our action, making conscious decisions and choices that reflect our values. So again, it's just been such a joy to have you on. And thank you all for joining us on this episode of More Precious Than Rubies. I hope that today's conversation with Emmy encourages you to reflect on your own place within your faith community and the unique contributions that you can make in your little world. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and tune in next time as we continue to explore the lives of remarkable women. Until then, you're worth far more than rubies. Set about your work vigorously with arms strong for your tasks. Open your arms to the poor and extend your hands to the needy. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised.